Hey guys, and welcome to another episode of Let's Max Warframe. Today we're going to be taking a look at a brand new clan tech weapon released in the 15.15 Tenno reinforcements, the Tonbo. The Tonbo is a melee weapon that has been needed for quite some time, a new polearm. We've not had a new polearm in quite some time, with the most recent one being the Cero back in update 13. So, what do we get from this badly needed addition? Well, you start with a total of 80 damage, with 40 coming in the form of slash, 12 puncture and 8 impact, placing it firmly in the top third of the melee weapons on damage alone. It also comes with a very respectable 25% status chance and an attack speed of 1 attack per second, meaning that high status builds are definitely an option when modding this weapon, should you feel that that's the way you want to go with it. The Tombo also comes with a lot of the advantages that polearms historically come with, such as a very large reach on the weapon, allowing for effective multi-hitting of enemies, plus a pretty reasonable jump attack with a decent area of effect knockdown. Another awesome feature of this weapon is the extremely high slide attack damage of 178, meaning that with the wide range of the weapon and the great slide attack damage, sliding attacks really are going to be the mainstay of this weapon. Although that said, that's not to say it's not going to be very capable outside of that role as well. Now the Tombo does come with a couple of downsides as well. That attack speed of 1 is far from being one of the fastest weapons, and while it's far from being the slowest, it's really not the best when you take into account the lack of critical chance, and the inability to use the Berserker mod for more attack speed. The weapon does also suffer with problems caused by channeling, which, since it's a very hard hitting weapon that hits multiple enemies at once, it does mean it's good for a mod like Lifestrike to keep your health up while meleeing. However, it does mean that there's a lack of control over the use of that energy, and since it's 5 energy per hit, and hitting 5 to 10 enemies at once with the reach of the weapon, that can mean you could use up to 50 energy in one swing of the weapon. Now realistically, that's not a problem with the weapon itself, it's more of a problem to do with channeling, which then causes problems for the weapons if you decide to mod for it. Now, to be honest, both of these are barely problems to do with the weapon, and are things that can be taken into account while modding. So whilst they are disadvantages, they are easily dealt with and not something that's going to ruin the weapon at all. Now I know that a lot of people have been comparing this to the Torpedo, which isn't strictly fair on the Tombo. However, it's pretty easy to see why parallels have been drawn between the two. The weapons are of a similar design, the stats are very similar, except that the Torpedo is a bit faster with better crit, but less status and less damage. A fairer comparison would be to a very similar weapon in its own class, which would be the Orthos Prime. Now the Orthos Prime sacrifices a bit of pure damage and status to the Tombo, however it has a higher crit chance and is significantly faster, at 1.2 attacks per second, as well as having more range on its attacks. What this means is that comparably, the weapons are very similar. However, the extra crit and attack damage that the Orthos Prime has doesn't quite make up for the damage it drops compared to the Tombo. However, it is very close, but it's just not quite there. Now, to very quickly touch on the stance mods for the weapon, of which there are 2 options. Shimmering Blight, which matches the polarity, and Bleeding Willow, which doesn't. Now, I'm not a big one for the melee stances. As I've said before, when it comes down to it, it's just which one has the best EEE combo, the first combo in the list. Since when in heavy combat, timing combos while dealing with incoming damage and a ton of enemy troops around you isn't really realistic. However, I have no real preference between the 2 stances. I marginally like Shimmering Blight more, purely because that first combo is very easy to do, keeps maneuverability high, and hits multiple enemies over and over again. However, either stance mod for this weapon is viable, but my preference is definitely Shimmering Blight. Okay, so let's move on to starting to mod the Tombo. Now it does come with 1 polarity as standard, this V polarity. However, we're going to add a dash through former. Now, we've got 2 different builds that we're going to show today, and I will go through the elemental combos for both of those builds. Now, we're going to start off with Shimmering Blight as our stance mod, Primed Reach, which absolutely benefits this weapon so much. It adds the range to the weapon, and so much range. It is absolutely fantastic. Definitely worth trying out to find out for yourself, but I absolutely recommend having that on there. We've got Pressure Point for melee damage, Fury for attack speed, we've got Buzzkill for boosting the slash damage of the weapon, we've got Spore Strike, which is going to increase the both the white damage and also the elemental damage, but we are going to lose a little bit of attack speed, which is why we've got the Fury on there to try and negate that a little bit. And then we're going to go with Life Strike. Now, because we've got the reduced efficiency of Life Strike, we're going to go with Focus Energy on all three of the elemental builds. Now, for Grineer, we're going to go against the really heavy Grineer, so we're going to go with Molten Impact along with that Focus Energy to bring up radiation damage. And if we're going to go up against the Corpus, we can switch out the Molten Impact for Northwind to bring up magnetic damage. And in the Void, then we can change out Northwind for Fever Strike to bring out the Fever Strike Focus Energy combo, which is going to bring up corrosive damage, which is going to hit through the armor of those Void units, which can also be used against the Infested. Now, our second build is without the Life Strike mod. Now, not everybody wants to run Life Strike, not everybody likes the channeling ability. And this is also the build that I run on Loki, is without the Life Strike, because I don't think it's really needed. So this allows us to have 3 elemental mods instead of just 2. Now this obviously is going to be your 4 times corrosive projection build, which is going to bring up the viral and heat damage. And then obviously against the Corpus we're going to go with magnetic and poison. And against the Grineer, again we're going to go with this viral and heat damage. And the corrosive damage against the Void units when you're not using corrosive projection, and also against the heavy Infested. So onto my opinion as to whether this weapon is worth the time and effort invested into it. And the answer to this shouldn't be any surprise. Yes, it's absolutely worth it. Now, for those of you that have been with my channel for any amount of time will know that melee really isn't my thing. And I've admitted on numerous occasions that melee weapons are there to get me from A to B in as quick a fashion as I can probably do. However, the last 2 melee weapons, the Torpedo and the Tombo, have actually got me pretty excited. These are both weapons that work extremely well for manoeuvring around the maps at high speed, either through comptering or the fantastic directional air melee, which is the best out of any of the melee weapons in the game. But these 2 weapons mark a very interesting turn in the road for how I feel about melee. It's no longer that you have to sacrifice damage on your melee for manoeuvrability. You can have your speed and agility, but then you can also have a very decent melee weapon to go along with that as well when you finally have to use it in combat. The Tombo is a fantastic weapon. It's quick enough once modded that it's never going to feel sluggish, even with the lack of Berserker or a high attack speed, but it hits more than hard enough to be considered as a serious contender for people to take it regularly into missions. Ever since the release of the Torpedo, I've barely put it down again, and the Tombo might even be the one to knock that out of my regular loadout once more. Now I know that as soon as I say that, people immediately worry about power creep. But quite frankly, between the Orthos Prime, a weapon that's been in the game since around update 9, this is definitely an upgrade, but there's not really a lot in it, nowhere near as much as people worry about. So do we have a new king of the polearms? Yes, we do. However, it's not like the Orthos Prime has been completely outclassed as to make it no longer an option. Either weapon is going to do you well, however, on pure damage, the Tombo has it beat. So in effect, a slower, heavier hitting polearm when compared to its counterparts. The Tombo is an absolutely fantastic weapon, balancing manoeuvrability with amazing damage. Definitely an asset to anybody's arsenal. As always guys, many thanks for watching. Please don't forget to leave a like and subscribe. It helps me out a ton, and I shall see you in the next episode.